Oh, wait, I'll stick. I'll play a different song than I played before.
Sure.
When twilight comes, it's the same key. And the day slips into It sounds a lot like the other one. I was just like, well, I've already got a cape up there, so. You want to try another one?
Sure, we can do another short little.
Okay, this is an A. This is kind of fun. Oh, yeah. Walk down. Back to the roots. I've always wanted a flute on this. Ride with me on a magic spinning wheel, high above the world in a gondola made of steel. And when my feet leave the ground, I'll surrender to my heart. Oh, kiss me on the Texas star. There you go. Take one.
Hey, and what a great start to welcome in Annie Benjamin for Flutarians Live. Here we are,
Yay!
already playing some flute music. Now, Annie does not just have a lovely voice, but she is also a flutist and an improvising flutist. So she was one of the first people I connected with, actually, after I decided to move forward with figuring out how am I going to help flute players improve their improvising. And aren't you tuning in from Albuquerque?
Yeah, I'm in northeastern Albuquerque, and it rained today, so that was great. I work in Santa Fe, and I think we had a good 2 or 3 hours of rain today, so life is good.
Great. Well, if y'all haven't ever visited the New Mexico mountains, I highly recommend it. Sometime you can expect a concert by me and Annie up there in that area.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
that'd be
play
awesome.
play
I'd love
some
it.
healing music, play some original songs, and I just wanted to give you, Annie, a little bit of a chance to share your flute story and to share your original music. So, would you mind
Yay.
telling us first, just basically, what's your origin story with flute?
So I always loved music, and even as a small girl, I knew I was going to be a musician. It was sort of just kind of there. But like so many people, I started in the band program at my school. And they went around and they brought all the instruments. Like they do at the end of fifth grade, and you get to hear all the high school kids play. It was all exciting. And I don't know what it was that drew me to the flute, but I just decided, I guess, that I wanted to play flute. And I missed out on my summer camp program that year, but I remember the first day of school, they put a flute in my hand and I got a sound out of it. And it was just like, I don't know, UFOs flew over the house or something. But and I was really, really blessed and really, really fortunate because the school that I went to had a really exceptional music program, and I had access to some phenomenal flute educators, just amazing educators. I took in private lessons in seventh grade, right out of the gate, and yeah, I guess they just figured this girl really loves it. She's really passionate about it, and she's able to get these great tones out of her flute so early. So when I was about 14, I went to my first master classes at SMU. I didn't play, but I got to listen, and Julius Baker was there. And I am such a fan of Julius Baker. He's probably my favorite player ever still. But that was really informative, and it was with the North Texas Flute Group up there, the North Texas. And so I got to hear flute choirs. I got to hear college students working on their recital pieces, and they were getting coached by Julius Baker, of all people, right? Oh my gosh, so when you're 14, 15 years old, that just like is the best. But also when I was 14, I discovered, like so many people, Jethro Tull. And
Sure.
Ian Anderson really changed my life in huge ways, because the first time I listened to Songs from the Wood, that album is the one that changed my life. I knew I didn't have to be a classical player anymore. And so starting in high school, and mostly just right out of high school, I started playing blues flute with all the blues guitar players in Dallas. And this would have been in the 80s. And I will never forget, there was this great old blues guy. His name was Zuzu Bolin, and he's probably like 80 years old at the time. Old Deep Ellum blues artist. And I would show up at his jams, with my flute. And he'd look at me, and here I was, a skinny little bitty tiny white girl with a flute. And he was like, I don't know what it is you're doing, girl, but you just keep doing it. Keep doing it. So they all took me under their wing, and I think that's where I really learned how to play, was by sitting in with these players who'd been playing blues for their whole lives and had these really neat licks that they played, and I learned to listen. And I really learned to listen, and blues is all about improvisation. And so being in that environment and being able to mimic the guitars, and there's this great thing that guitar players do, or I call it the testosterone playoff, where the blues guys go and the other guy go, and they'll go back and forth. And I learned to do that with the flute, and a lot of it is just listening, falling on your butt, getting out there and just playing. And so yeah, so that's what I did for a long, long time. And then when I was in my 40s, I went back and relearned how to read music, and I played some classical music, mostly chamber music duets at the Dallas Museum of Art, and we would pair our programs with whatever the art exhibits were. So those are some of my favorite memories, actually, doing those, because I think the nice thing about playing music in that capacity was that we were playing chamber music, but it was really accessible because it was with the artwork. You know, it wasn't. I've got a shadow coming from the sun and the blinds. It's kind of funny.
A beam of light.
I know, right? But yeah, it was great because you're listening to the music the way it was meant to be heard, and it wasn't this precious sacred thing like it would be in a concert hall, where people we were playing the chamber music in the art museums. You know, people were walking around and they were dancing to the music and they were moving with it and listening to it and experiencing it with the art in these intimate spaces. So I think that those were some of my favorite gigs, and that's kind of why I like playing music, because I like the intimacy of it. So does that make sense?
It makes sense. I'm just trying to hold on to a question and also a thought. Hearing you, I've been actually all day I've been kind of trying to articulate this. Yesterday I had a conversation with Jeremy Dittis, and he's part of he runs the Dalcroze School in Dallas actually, and he used this phrase "music for movement," and Dalcroze is all about movement and your rhythmics. And what I thought he meant at first was, you mean music with, like, teaching a student to have a musical sentence that has a beginning, a middle, and an end. He said,
yeah.
that's more later. He said, I mean music that is composed or created, improvised in the moment for people who will be moving like dancers. Like the students in their classes who are learning to coordinate their bodies with rhythm. And I'm reminded of that now because you were talking about how chamber music it's for these scenarios frequently like an art show where the people who are closest to you, they may be watching you. But the people who are on the other side, they're sipping their wine and nibbling on cheese, you know, and having conversations about art theory and, you know, stuff like that. And that environment is so sweetened by the presence of just a little bit of classical music that's what that's for. And so I realized through my conversation with Jeremy that I guess the music that I prefer on a general daily basis is music that is to move you. It's either I'm going to Zumba class and it's for Latin dance fitness, trying to get my cardio shape, cardio fitness in shape, or it's music that could even be described as medicine music that gets you up and moving and thinking and moving through emotions, but it makes me want to sway or dance at home. So I think that you and I probably have in common a preference for that sort of music, or at least just that's the sort of music that is in our daily lives. But
yeah, definitely.
You shared a little bit of your story with me before, and I'm thinking of a question now that is you didn't go into detail before, and I wonder. So, what was the moment of ignition or something that got you into the sudden? Okay, now you're in Deep Ellum playing in blues circles, but what? But who did you know, or what did you ask about? How did that come to be? Because that's a unusual scenario for a 17-year-old.
It is, and it's a really unusual scenario for somebody who's been studying classical music all of a sudden to jump into a totally different vibe with totally different people who approach music in a very, very different way. Because when you're learning classical music or you're playing traditional classic, you've got music in front of you and you're reading it. Whereas when you jump into the world of improvisation, it's like flying. I mean, you're just like jumping without a net, sort of, you know. But I always loved. I mean, I remember as a little bitty kid hearing some Joni Mitchell music where she had flute on it. I don't even know what songs they were, but I was like, I like that. So I would just I loved listening to the radio, and I would just play with the radio, just play, because I consider that practicing for me, because I was practicing my tone or whatever. But reading music has always been hard for me. I think I was telling you, I have double vision. So when I try to read sheet music, it's difficult. And so I would just memorize everything. And so I was already listening and listening to the radio. And then when I get in band, I got really bored and I'd start writing my own parts because, you know, band in high school is all just like people playing through the same parts all the time.
Sure.
Which is probably why
I'm sure that went over real well.
I sat last chair, last band, right? But no, I had some. I played music with some friends in high school and garage bands and things like that, and so I don't know. I just got the bug, and I just decided I wanted to go out and learn how to play. And when I was 16, I was very fortunate. I snuck out to go listen to Red Garland play. So, you know, I was off to a great start there. But I was already watching them and watching how they were playing. And so I think that was kind of the impetus for it, was having seen these jazz players playing. And I knew that I wasn't going to, I mean, I can play jazz and I can fake my way through it, but I really felt like rock and roll is where I needed to be. So I just started just going out, and I literally would show up with my flute and I would say to people, "Can I sit in with you?" And most people were pretty cool about it. They were like, yeah, sure." And then I'd play and they were like, "Oh, yeah, you can play the rest of the set with us." But I think it was just having the chutzpah to just get out there and play. And to realize I was going to make mistakes, but you know, when you're 17, you're infallible. Like, you just, I don't know. I just was like, I'm going to do it. I'm just going to go out there and play.
I think there's a few different routes that people deal with that same sort of feeling of performance anxiety, and you clearly went the like, I'm going to get the chutzpah and just like deal with the discomfort until it's not so uncomfortable anymore. But I think the majority of people are just like, what, this is going to be uncomfortable? I'm going to fail in front of people? This is absolutely not. But I thought it was interesting and almost ironic a few moments ago when you used the metaphor of it's like flying without a net. Ironic because the only reason I am in good shape now is because I saw Cirque du Soleil a long time ago, and I was like, I want to try that. I discovered that any of that is exceptionally difficult, but it's also very dangerous, right? So when they do the flying trapeze, usually they have a net, and I'm frequently telling people that improvisation won't kill you. So
it won't.
So it's actually, it's almost like you could take your metaphor and just say it's like flying with a net. But it feels like flying without a net, because what's the, well, I would be curious to hear, what is the worst possible outcome? What's the worst time when you messed up in front of somebody?
Oh my gosh, well, I can tell you, this wasn't really a mess up, but this is a horror story. So, but I survived it. I was playing a gig, actually it was in a theater production. And I had borrowed someone's flute. Because my flute at the time, I had a really cruddy flute. I was in the process of saving up to get another flute. So I borrowed a flute from someone. And everything was fine. But there's a scene where we're kind of dancing around. And I had this person's flute in my hand. And the foot joint fell off in the middle of the show. I'm like, oh my God. And I'm playing a solo and it falls off. And I just kind of dance around and I have to lean over and pick up the foot joint and put it back on the flute, start playing again. And, you know, that's horrifying because, you know, you work so hard to make sure your choreography's right and whatever it is you're doing, you know, with your playing is right. And, I mean, the guys I was playing with were great and the women in the production were fantastic and everybody did even better and we just kept going. But then not only that, but it wasn't my flute. I had borrowed it, you know. So I was, oh my God, all those feelings come at the same time. And I'm like having to perform. And I mean, it was a happy ending. I just took it over to a flute tech. And the guy I borrowed it from said, oh, well, that wasn't my sensible flute anyway.
Well, you're not the only one that something like that has happened to. You tell me that story, and I'm recalling one of my favorite posts I've ever made, which was share a funny flute story. Multiple people, at least one other person in the world, has had their flute foot joint fall off during a
Oh
performance.
gosh,
so.
it was that's oh my god, that's the scariest. And a guy I used to play with one time, he told me he was doing a recital and his pad fell out. A pad fell out, and he's like, "Well, I can't play anymore. Sorry."
You lived.
I lived, and I laugh about it now. And the thing is, because I play so much improvisational music, I was able to just pick it up and keep going. And I think that's a really important skill to have, regardless of whether you're working on being an improvisational player, at a jam or with a group, or even if you are playing, chamber music or something, because things happen. People will cough, or there was a show one time where a lady had a heart attack in the middle of the show, and we had to keep going. And I think what you gain from being in a situation where you don't have any control, which sometimes happens when you're playing improvisationally, not all the time, of course, but there are moments where you just have to be one with where you are. And I think that those are skills that can go over into other aspects of performance, and with pieces like recitals, or a very I don't want to say regimented, but a very predictable music that you're playing. If you are able to just kind of figure out, okay, well, that person just dropped out. They weren't supposed to drop out there. What do I do? I'll just make a little trill here. You're able to think a little bit more on your feet. And I think that's a beautiful thing that comes from just trying to improvise. I think it allows you to be in the moment. And I think that that's a beautiful thing about playing music.
Yeah. I think being in the moment, being in that state of flow where you feel one with the music, one with the band, is what draws the majority of us to be in music and stay in music. And I think oftentimes that classical players are chasing that feeling, seeking that feeling that we get in performance and in rehearsal. I find that it's easier to get that feeling with improvisation because you can jump right into the state of flow. But
Yeah,
I
definitely.
love what you were saying about how doing just a little bit of improvisation, even if it's just exercise for you, will help prepare you for those inevitable moments when life happens.
Exactly.
Somebody could skip a measure. Their music could fly off the stand. Somebody could have a heart attack. Somebody,
Sneeze.
you could sneeze. There's a million things that could happen and have happened. And please, y'all who are watching, I would love to hear your funny and dramatic stories from concerts. But I think that might actually be the number one benefit of practicing improvisation if you're a classical musician, is that your nervous system will be better prepared for how to handle when that stuff happens.
Yeah, definitely. And I do think that that's something that we take over to other parts of our lives too. Because I am way less afraid to put myself into positions with other people in conversations, because music is a conversation. And when you're improvising, especially when you're with other people, there has to be a sort of trust between you and the people you're working with. And that trust enables you to be able to, you're trusting that they're going to carry, at least if you're improvising like with a band, like I do. I have to trust that the musicians I'm working with are going to give me the space and the musical space within the music line to be able to explore an idea and to be able to do it fully and completely. So there's a lot of give and take that happens in that environment. And I find that I take that over into other aspects of my life now in ways that I didn't before. I just was doing, and I just started doing improvisational classes, comedy classes, and it's the same thing. Because you have to trust that, and it's not just about you, it's about the whole, and it's about the whole working together and the give and take that happens between everyone who's working together at this time. So yeah, you got to trust that they're gonna catch up, because like I said, sometimes it's like flying without a net, but you've got a good team that's gonna support you and lift you back up. That's how I look at it.
There are a few skills that you can develop over time that help you become more flexible with that. One that's just coming to mind that I can articulate now is learning how to slow down just enough that you can give somebody the chance to catch up. Which, gosh, these sorts of things would be kind of hard to articulate, but in listening to you talk about how similar it must be to do comedy improv and conversation with someone, how similar it is to showing up at a jam night, I'm thinking about the variety of people and archetypes that show up at a jam night. And I'm kind of a sociologist, y'all, so I find this stuff fascinating. And I think, I've been so blessed to sit in a wide variety of jam nights with a wide variety of people. And I think about, first off, age. Okay, well, I might be sitting with somebody who's 9. I might be sitting with somebody who's 90. And I don't know until they start playing which one is more skilled of a musician, which one has better rhythm, because there's some really talented, experienced 9-year-olds, and there's some 90-year-olds who are just starting a new thing, or they may not be musicians, but they're at the jam night, so they're singing or clapping along. And so just like if you're playing improv with a comedy troupe and there's a wide variety of people there, if you're playing with somebody who's 11 or 12 years old and they don't maybe get some of the jokes that some of the adults are making because they just don't understand the language, you have to give them the chance you have to slow down what you're doing a little bit until they can hop back on board.
Yeah, exactly.
Can
and
you think
have to do that with the people that you're playing with too, Yeah, and I think that's the beauty of it. That's why I have to say that's one of the reasons why I love improv so much. Because not only are you never doing the same thing twice, even if you might be on the same line, it's not going to be the same. It's about interacting with others and creating something bigger than yourself and bigger than your experience, and you create something completely new and different. I don't think I'm necessarily a real religious person, but when I was growing up, there was we used to always sing, whenever 2 or more are gathered in my name, there is love. And I think that's how I think of improv. That's how I think of music when there's many people who come together, because you're creating this big, beautiful, joyous thing that you can't do by yourself. And it's so cool. It's everything. So that's kind of how I look at improv. So.
Well, maybe one more question before we play a little music. I'm curious. I was starting to say, can you think of any other little skill that you've had to develop over time that helps create unity or cohesiveness when you're playing with other musicians, right? Because we're all at a certain skill level. I'm a better improviser now than I was a decade ago.
That's a really good question. Well, I think listening is a huge thing, because I think that if you are aware of how the other person is approaching music, like if it's a slow song, you're not going to want to start breaking into something that's going to go typically, but I think it's not just listening with your ears, it's listening with your heart. And I think that is a big, big thing, because I think that if you can work on meeting people where they are, not just musically, just in general in your life, if you can work on listening to what people are saying and listening to nonverbal cues as well, and being present with that person, I think that really helps with the way that I approach improv. I mean, I work on my scales, and I think understanding your scales and all the notes in every scale and the relationship of notes, to other notes and thirds and fifths and sevenths and whatever, and the genre you're playing in. Like blues is so predictable. It really is predictable. So you've got a set of notes that you're working with and ideas, and so you're going to want to. And for me, knowing the scale system and knowing the structure of a genre helps. That's huge. But like I said, I think listening to that other person and seeing how much they're going to give to you helps as well, especially with when you're improvising in a setting with where you're working with other people. If you're in a setting where maybe you're playing music with a poet who's reciting some poetry, because that's an awesome place to do improv too. But to listen to the words, listen to the ideas that are coming through, and really try to visualize what is being maybe painted with those words, and then try to form your notes around that. I think that helps too, and the cadence of the people singing, or the cadence, the rhythm of what they're doing, their flow. But yeah, I think listening is everything. But not just this listening, heart listening. Yeah.
Thanks for that.
Yeah. Well, thanks for asking that question. That's a really good one. That's a really, really good question.
If that's one of my challenges, as I've cut myself out to be an improvisation teacher now, and well, I can teach some things about improvisation, but really what I'm doing is putting people in environments where they can practice listening.
So what kind of things do you, what kind of environments do you encourage to find or to create for your students, or for people that you're educating?
Well, when you were telling your origin story, you hit on one of my top things that people should do. That's just turn on music that you know and like. Play with that. Mm-hmm. There's nothing that can replace playing live with other musicians, but at the same time, on the flip side of that, there's nothing that can replace practicing in the privacy of your own home or your own practice room. And one of the best ways to start using your ears is to see if you can find the key signature for a song that comes on random play. It'll be more enjoyable for you if it's songs that you already know and love, but it really works with any sort of music. So that's one of my top exercises that anyone can do.
Yeah. Do you tell people to just like let go and play, or do you recommend like the North Texas? I have a lot of friends who went to North Texas, and I know you did too, right? Mm-hmm, yeah. But there were classes where they would teach improv, and they'd give you like a set idea that you would work with in every different key, and then you go from there. So I mean, there's different ways to approach it.
I think it's important to do both at different times. Yeah. You'll have more fluency when you're improvising if you practice the brainy stuff separately, but I'm starting to systematize some electronic ways that people can, take the same lick, you could say, and practice it in every key. Okay, now take this and practice it in every key, because actually most of what I tell my students is that if you've already been playing scales and arpeggios and classical music, your fingers know the way, your body knows the way. God knows I've spent hundreds of hours on scales in my life, if not thousands at this point. And that was true even when I was 14, because I was very dedicated to get into the all-state band when I was a freshman, and so I put in a lot of that time then. But if you've even just been playing a lot of classical music, the muscle memory is there like riding a bike. It's more complicated than riding a bike, but you will be surprised that when you are able to let go, what comes out are major scales and arpeggios. And if you just mix that up in different orders, there's infinite possibilities. Yeah. So I continue to try and build my fluency in ideas that are, for example, what other people would say. It's good for me to practice what other musicians would say or have said, so that when I want to say something similar in the future, I can reach for that. And if I had not heard that thing before, I might have not been able to think that. I just finished reading the Improvise for Real book. David Reed, I think, is the author's name. And he says that we have an infinite musical library in our mind. So anything you've ever listened to, if you can remember it even just a little bit, that is now part of your music library that you can access. when you improvise. Now, when I hear a little tune in my mind, it's audiating in my mind. When I'm improvising, I make my best guess on the flute as to what it's going to be. But it doesn't always turn out that way. I don't have perfect pitch, and I'm still improving my own improvising to where it'd be nice if I could get 100% of exactly what it is. But what I've discovered through my experience over the past, well, gosh, really 20 years now, is that if you stay within the scale, you're good. You're just move up and down until you find a note that's comfortable. And even if you land on what could be called an outside note that's outside of the scale, you can use your chromatic scale at any moment to move up and down to a note that is consonant. And in fact, if you become really fluent with your chromatic scale, it just sounds like a jazzy technique.
Exactly. That's what we say. Oh, that's just jazz.
Yeah. So
but those kind of things too. I think when you start adding those odd little colors with your notes that maybe don't seem like they're within that structure, that's kind of another great thing that can happen with improvisation, because then you have an opportunity to say, oh yeah, well I meant that, or but it can help define who you are as a player as well. It can become maybe your signature little lick that you throw in, or an interesting way of listening and hearing things too.
Sure.
I love to throw in a weird note every now and then.
And listening to recordings of yourself is probably the best way to improve. I say if you want to find your own unique voice, you must listen to your recordings. And when you do, listen for the stuff that you hate and listen for the stuff that you love. The stuff that you hate, it's time to make a decision. How are you going to address that? Maybe ask for help from a teacher. And the stuff that you love, do that more, because that's your unique voice. It's, there's little things that make us different. It could be the shape of our hands, the shape of our, the inside of our heads that makes our resonance, or it could be we practiced this exercise or this piece more in the past, and so it's more ingrained in our muscle memory. But those little unique things are the things that come out to be our unique voice. One of the things that I love listening to is when I'm listening to a cellist or a violinist and they're doing something improvisatory. I love hearing these extreme glissandos, slow enough, right? And so when I'm practicing my chromatic scales on flute, I'm trying to channel that energy, and that's something that's become unique to my voice. But if you like it, copy it.
Yeah. I think another thing too that I was really blessed and fortunate in being exposed to as a really young student is that my flute teachers all realized really early that I had a good ear because I couldn't see. And so I had one particular educator, her name was Debbie, and she would get recordings of different players playing the same pieces, and she would have me listen to them. And as a result, I learned to be a really good critical listener. And I learned that even though, a piece of music might be written a certain way, it can be interpreted so many different ways. And I think that was another really important thing in my learning and my unlearning, if you will. Because even in pop music and country music, there are a million versions of certain songs, right? How many versions are of The Circle Will Be Broken? Are there? Oh my gosh, there's so many. Or Ring of Fire, or, I'm just trying, Brown Eyed Girl. There's so many versions, and people do them differently. And there's little moments that happen, like even when you're in the recording studio, there are moments that happen where you play something that you didn't want to play, like your finger will do something weird, or maybe you'll make a strange noise with your mouth, and you're like, oh my God, I can't believe I just did that. And the producer will be like, oh, see, keep that, that's cool. That was improvisation, because it just happened in the moment. Keep it. And those are things that we need to celebrate. I think those are magic little moments that only happen, every now and then, and we need to celebrate that just as much. One of the things that I used to do with my student, I had a flute student during the pandemic, and I was trying to teach online. It was really difficult because she was 12. But one of the things that we started doing was we would record ourselves, and I would record myself, and she would record herself, and we would go back and we would watch what happened during the process of learning, and the little weird twerks and squeaks and weird noises that she would make with her mouth. And she would go back and she'd go, oh, well, that was really cool. And I'd say, yeah, like when you're playing with the radio, use that again. Try to redo that sound if you like it. And just to learn to self-listen, and to go in it with an open heart, and not, oh my God, that was so bad. That was so bad. That was so bad. No. Think about what you did right. Think about what you did right, and then go back and talk about the rest of this stuff. But yeah, filming yourself and recording yourself. I mean, you can just record yourself with your phone now. It's great. And just play. Just play. When you go out and you're like dancing in the sun, or you're running through a field, or you're going hiking, you're playing. And I think that we need to remember to do that with our instruments too. There's a reason why we call playing the flute or playing the guitar. You're playing. And you're being creative, and you're allowing yourself to be creative. And improv is all about expressing that creativity within a framework. But you're giving yourself leeway to play, and it's joyful, and it should be a joyful experience, I think. Unless you're playing the blues, and then,
Well,
then it's about getting your angst out.
Well, you're talking about this idea of idiomatic improvisation. Now, I just returned from the National Flute Association convention, and I went right from one class that was free improvisation with no idiom. It's like play whatever you want, to another class that was jazz improvisation. It has a specific idiom. We were talking about a 12-bar blues.
Yeah.
And so you and me, we'll play a little bit of music in the, I guess you could say, rock style, or singer. Some people would even say singer-songwriter style.
Yeah.
But I guess I should give you a little chance to make a bridge here. We've been talking all about flute and not really any about your songwriting. So I know you mentioned that you've been writing this song Prospect Street. Would you maybe give us the short version of the story of how you even started writing songs and this one specifically?
Well, I think that when you play music, you automatically have rhythm. And for me, music, I see music in colors, and I see music as a palette. Joni Mitchell does that. When she's a painter, and I really think that her songs paint an image, they paint a picture. But the rhythm, and I have always been a reader, I've always been a poet. And so the idea of melding music and language just is a natural for me. But when I was a young flute player, I was about 21, and I was playing in a trio, and these guys went to this, there was a house it wasn't actually on Prospect Street, it was a street over, but Prospect Street sounds better in a song than Orem Street. Orem doesn't come off the tongue very well. Prospect has a consonant, pa, pa, which is much better in a song. Plus the word prospect is loaded, right? So, but there was a poet that lived in this house, and the guys went back to the back to go talk to him. I'm sure that they were probably doing all sorts of things that I didn't want to know what they were doing, back in the back. But anyway, I was sitting in the kitchen of this house, and there was this guy playing the guitar, and he was sitting on the floor playing guitar, and he had a harmonica, and he was sitting cross-legged, and he had a bottle of some alcoholic beverage, and he was working on a song, writing a song of some sort, and I got captured. There was something about what was happening in this moment that I knew was bigger than me, and I couldn't explain what it was, but it was like this dude was plugged in. He was plugged into some sort of power grid that I wanted to be plugged into. And it was just magical, and that's all I can say. And the guys came out later and they're like, hey, we got to go to practice, let's go. And I'm like, no, we got to stay and listen to this guy. And they're like, do you know who that is? And I said, well, no, he's just probably some really drunk guy who's probably not got a place to live, but he's staying here, and but he's really making cool music, let's listen to it. And the guys are like, oh, come on, yeah, he is homeless, and yes, he is an alcoholic, but that's Townes Van Zandt. And for those who don't know who Townes Van Zandt was, he's one of America's greatest songwriters, and he lived a very nomadic life. He was a very troubled soul, but there's something that I think that when people walk a line between trying to function in what modern society tells us we have to be in this creative side, it's troubling, but that's where art comes from, I think, often. But that was really the day that I decided that I wanted to do that. I wanted to be a songwriter after I heard that. And again, I had no idea who he was, but it was just me and Townes, and I like to think that maybe he knew I was sitting there listening, and he allowed me to be in his presence while he was working on a song. So that's how this song got started. And
wow.
Yeah, it's crazy. But that happened when I was 21, and up until recently, I haven't really been. I usually veil my words. If it's my story, I try to put it in the perspective of someone else, so it's not so crazy personal. But I think as of late, I realized that maybe my stories are kind of cool, and I'm at a point in my life now where maybe I can put it in my perspective. So I've started doing that more, and I've started telling stories, and this isn't based on it. All of this is true except for the name of the street. I changed the name of the street, but this is a country waltz, and when you play flute at live, when you play guitar and sing, you can't really play flute at the same time with yourself. So I think it's really awesome that you're going to play on it. I'm so excited because I hear flute on this, and if I was in the studio, I could do it, but this is awesome. So,
well, I look forward to hearing it. Just for
Let me
my
check my
listeners,
tuning real quick.
yeah. When I haven't heard this song all the way through before, except I think you might have sent me a recording. I listened to part of it, and when I listen to somebody play a song for the first time, I try and give enough space and volume so that I can hear the words. So when I hear Annie play, I'll probably mostly let you sing the first verse just all on your own, and I'll come in quietly and maybe reflect some of the rhythms that you're playing, and I'll figure out what key you're in. I think we were playing in G or A.
It's an
earlier.
A. Maybe it's an A.
Yeah, so...
Okay, this will be fun.
Is this song completed? What's the status of this song?
This song is complete,
Okay.
and I am going to record it. I haven't decided how I'm going to record it yet, but I want it to be. I may have someone else play in maybe a more of a Travis picking style on it. That's a style of guitar that's like a real country style, and I'm not the greatest at doing that. But I actually I don't know what I'm going to do with it yet. But it is finished. The song is finished. The words are finished and the melody's finished. So,
Cool.
yeah. But also I think it's important to, because I was talking about framework earlier. This song has two verses, and then the chorus, and then two verses, and then the chorus. So that's a really great way when you're improvising. You can listen through the chorus the verse the first time, and then come in like you're talking about. But Townes wrote songs that he didn't always put like a bridge in a song. And a bridge is a section of a song where you take whatever's happening in the song, and the bridge gives you an opportunity to transcend, if you will. You can either transcend with what's happening with your musical line or your lyrical line, or sometimes both. But this song doesn't have a bridge. It's pretty simple in that regard. And Townes, I think, wrote a lot of songs like that. He didn't always put a lot of bridges in his songs, which is another reason why they're accessible. And that's another reason why it's fun to improvise on a song like this, because it's pretty predictable songline. And so for people who are just starting to improvise, finding songs like this, I think helps, because you're repeating the same ideas over and over again. And so you have more room I think, to play with whatever musical ideas you have.
That's a good point.
Yeah, thank you. I think about these things too. It's that nerdy part. This is a waltz, it's in 3.
Okay.
A poet and his mistress are in a catalog kitchen from Sears Roebuck's, built in 1909. There are cracks in the shadows and in the panes of the windows. The cotton curtains are stained and yellowed with time. Now the poet and his mistress rendezvous in the kitchen. The linoleum's all peeling back. The floorboards are worn, the wallpaper's torn, and in the sink broken dishes are stacked. The foundation's falling, spirits are calling. There are words on the wind, and at this haunted table he just might be able to catch some again. Now the poet and his mistress, they're getting stoned in the kitchen to conjure strains of a sacred design. He's strumming his guitar, serenading a lost heart, a broken beauty by the name of Caroline. Now the poet and his mistress, they're waltzing in the kitchen, even though he can't get up off the floor. She's his muse in a bottle, she's a long hard swallow, and she always leaves him thirsty for more. Oh, the foundation's falling, spirits are calling. There are words on the wind, and at this haunted table he just might be able to catch some again. Now the poet and his mistress, they ain't got much in this kitchen, but she's something he can hold. And on Prospect Street, prospects are bleak, but the songs are worth more than gold. That was beautiful. Thank you. Oh, that was awesome. Love it. Oh my gosh.
Sweet little
Thank you.
song there.
Thank you. That was sweet playing. Oh, that was great. Thank you. What a joy.
I look forward to listening back to the recording. One of the things that it brings me personal joy and just interest sometimes is when I play a song, when I improvise with a song when I've never heard it all the way through before. It's a unique capture, and sometimes the first take is the best take because I have to be more inventive, and I'm guessing. On the other hand, other songs it turns out better where I've listened to it and I've listened to it and I've listened to it enough to where I've got certain parts memorized, and then that sounds better. But I just wanted to point out that sometimes there's these unique choices that happen on the fly when I know less about the music, and sometimes because they're a little bit more spicy or non-traditional.
I love spicy. That's great.
Maybe a little more non-traditional. It gives it more interest when I'm listening back to it, and I'll go, oh, maybe I should do that on purpose next time. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And one of the things that and it's I do so many things instinctively now because I've been doing this for so long and I've been improvising for so long that sometimes I don't have the language to explain it because it's become kind of sort of I kind of understand a lot what I do on a cellular level and a spiritual soul level thing. But going and doing these improv comedy classes has been really fascinating for me because I'm learning a lot about improv and how to explain it and how to verbalize it in different ways because it's a different, it's the same thing, but it's expressed differently. But one of the things that they were saying in one of the classes I was taking is that's how people workshop a lot of times. So they're working up new ideas is they'll do improv and they'll record the improv and then they'll go back like you were just saying, and that's how they'll create a riff or they'll create a line that they end up using. I like to think of like when Neil Diamond was doing Sweet Caroline, because there's that great hook, bum bum bum, right? It's so simple. It's just 3 notes, right? Bum bum bum, but it's brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant hook, and I think somebody must have just been goofing around in the studio and did that, and they were like, yeah, let's keep it because it's just like that, and it's not. I mean, when we're scoring something out, we always want to. Oh well, let's go da 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 da, or da 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 da, and then bum bum bum. Just do bum 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 right there. Oh my gosh! But I like to think that that's how that happened.
A little
but
seed
yeah, but it's
saved from a special
workshopping,
moment,
workshopping, and I think improv. That's another great thing about improv, is when you're in there without any expectations and you're just playing, you come up with creative, or you maybe you can go back and listen and go, well, that was really cool. What if I changed this and then try it? And so it's a great creative space.
Yeah, it's not going to be brilliant every time. that expectation is unrealistic, but
yeah, but I think sometimes, I don't know, I can't speak for you, but I think sometimes like when I go to shows and I listen to people play, I kind of like it when they do things where they mess up a little bit, because I'm all about how do they choose to recover from that. I mean, for me that's kind of a game as a maybe it's cruel, but it reminds me of their humanity. And I think that I think too, like with AI now that we have AI, and you can really hear it so much in pop music now, where they go in and they do auto tuning and they do the correct one little note, and it's really hard sometimes now to tell what's been corrected and what hasn't. And that's why I also like improv, because I know it's real. I know it's real. I know it's in the moment. I know there's a beautiful spirit behind whatever it is that's being created. In improv, and I don't know if I don't think that AI can do that the same way. I mean,
well,
they have
it will be
a set
interesting
of
to
variables,
witness
but,
how
yeah.
the attempts over the coming years.
Yeah. But AI wouldn't call it a mistake, and I'm like, I go back and I listen to Beatles albums, and when I listen to the original ones versus like the remastered ones, I don't like the remastered ones.
Oh, I haven't done that listening experiment yet.
Yeah,
that sounds
do
fun
it.
though.
Yeah, because you'll hear noises and you'll hear things that just kind of randomly happen in the studio.
Well, I've been reflecting on that topic a little bit this week of basically like how many mistakes are acceptable, because I've just been at the National Flute Association convention where there are these extreme competitions going on and lots of flute music happening.
Oh, yeah.
And I also found myself in a position where I was given a piece a week and a half before time to debut it, and it's like, how perfect. And then I'm given the mock-up of it, and I'm in my brain, I'm trying to make it just like the mock-up, but that's not realistic for the performance given the time that we had. And I'm comparing that to, I heard someone in the class talk about another, Emerson Quartet or somebody saying, like, if someone else hears them make two wrong notes, they might consider it like not a success. And it's like, that's probably not great on the psyche to have that level of perfectionism. We were talking about that in some of the classes at NFA, and in the context of improvisation, I think doing just a little bit of improvisation can really change your opinion on what is a mistake, because there's actually a specific moment on this, the Cosmic Butterflies Lover Songs album that came out a couple months ago, where I went in to play my flute solo and I went ba-da instead of ba, but we kept it because it sounded good. And when I first played it, I thought, I didn't mean to do that. But then it's almost, I think of it almost like as a little gift from the Holy Spirit, like move that, like a little thunderbolt, like making that finger have a spasm at that moment. And the reality is that if we're staying within that 7-note major scale sort of system, chances are pretty good that it's gonna sound good. And so our perception of what is wrong is perhaps overblown compared to what it actually sounds like as a listener. Gosh, it's a very different perspective being a listener of music than being a performer of music, right?
Yeah, totally. And that's a really good point. And I think too, like something I always used to say to my students was, practice makes permanent. It doesn't make perfect. And because I think too, when things are too rigid, they break.
Yeah.
And there has to be room for breath, and there has to be room for your knowledge to come through. That's not to say that you need to go in and totally, put trills where there's not trills on a written piece and things like that, but sometimes your experience with a piece of music is you're gonna do things like that for whatever reason, or maybe you make that choice, sometimes you don't. But I don't know. I don't think missing two notes will make something not a success.
I think there's certainly some competitions that happened last weekend that if the performers had missed two notes, they would have not received the prize. But
but that's a different genre of music, and the music is written out to be played that way. But still, you can play something beautifully. And I mean, look at Simone Biles at the Olympics. She still walked away with gold even when she had some baubles, So I think that's a good example too. But that's the way I approach it. And I'm not playing in a symphonic capacity, and I'm not playing pieces exact, because I write my own music and I never sing it the same way twice. So,
Well,
but that allows me to be open to have people like you play with me.
Well, you do have an album, Nightbird, right?
Yeah, I've got 4 albums out.
I know that Nightbird is on your website.
Yeah, Nightbird is my new one, the most recent one, and I actually recorded it in Austin, at Arlen Studios, and then also at Blue Rock in Wimberley. And I was really blessed in that we recorded during the pandemic, and so I had access to a lot of musicians because they weren't traveling, and they weren't on tour, and they were looking to work. And so my producer, I didn't produce this album, produced my other 3, but I hired a producer for this one, and he was able to call them up and say, hey, you need some work? And he's working on this really cool project. And this totally ties in with what we're talking about with improv too, because I sent everybody the music. My partner Mike and I wrote the music out, and we did basic recordings on our little, home recording system, and we sent it to the producer, we sent it to the musicians, so everybody could listen to the music and the ideas behind the music. And I gave a description of what I was expecting and kind of an idea of what I was thinking. But when we got into the studio, all of us were in the studio together. And we were doing it like old school recordings. Whereas opposed, I think a lot of recordings now often get made where, somebody will lay down a track and then someone else will put a track over it. And then, maybe you'll have two people in the studio at the same time, maybe people who are singing together, but it doesn't always happen anymore where everybody's in the studio anymore. And we were all in the studio together, and we were exchanging ideas, and we would run through a track, and Brady, my producer, would say, hey Annie, why don't you put some flute on this song? And I'd just go in and I'd start playing. Well, we did 2 takes. The first was like, that was great, but I think you need to do this here. So we did 2 tracks, and that was totally improvised. And then there were some other parts where we did do tracks on top, but everybody was in the room together, and everybody could say, I want to try this. What would happen if I tried this? Or what would happen if I tried this? And it was improvising. But we were all in the room together, improvising together. And I think that was a really important thing about this last project I did, is that everybody was part of it. Everybody made the sound. Everybody contributed to making it what it is. And, it's just a beautiful thing. I'm really, really proud of it. I was really fortunate. I had gotten divorced, and I had sold my house, and I made more money than I expected. So I literally sold my house and made a record, which sounds like a great country song, I know, but
I think that might be the title of your next album.
I sold my house and made a record.
Sold my house and made a record.
But it was great because we were all working together in the moment as improvisers, and everybody had a different take, and I think that's what made it so cool. So yeah, my new one is called Nightbird, and I can find it on Bandcamp or you go to my website anniebenjamin.com, and there's a link on there, and there's a little movie about making the project, and so everybody's talking about each other, and it's really nice, and everybody was like everybody's champion. It was a great experience. I hope I get to do it again.
Aw, yeah, check it out, y'all.
And there is flute on that one. I don't always put flute on all my songs on my albums, but I have it on a few songs, and but I find that I do a lot of improvising on other people's projects too. So it's fun. I really feel like flute is the coolest instrument ever, because you can do so much with it. You can make it percussive or legato, or it's just the coolest. I played flute before I sang, so.
Well, flute is great training for singing.
It sure is.
Yeah.
It's the best.
Would you like to maybe sing another song or two?
Sure. Would you like to play with me?
Of course.
Yeah. Okay. Let me think of one that right out the gate. You know what? No, that one's a waltz. Let me do one that's not a waltz. Oh, do you want to do something kind of fun and punky?
Sure, we started playing something fun.
You want to do Texas Star?
I don't remember what we played a few measures of before when we were first starting the show, so to speak. But
yeah, let's do that one. That's called Texas Star.
I was starting to get the groove. It sounded fun.
Okay, so this is in the key of A for those playing at home, and you're playing at home, or you're in your studio, so that kind of counts. So this is in the key of A. This one has, I'm trying to explain. The structure on this one's pretty good. It has a bridge. It does have a bridge. And I think the chorus is what happens at the end of the line. But this is about the Ferris wheel at the State Fair of Texas. It's called the Texas Star. And this is a song about it. But it's also got more going on, because it's also got some double entendres going on. Okay. But it's kind of got a Texas swing kind of vibe. Okay, you ready? One,
Okay.
2, 3, 4. Ride with me on a magic spinning wheel, high above the world in a gondola made of steel. And when my feet leave the ground, I'll surrender to my heart. Oh, baby, won't you kiss me on the Texas Star? And baby, you're my favorite amusement ride. You thrill me beyond compare, so you better hold on tight. And we'll fly over buildings, carousels and bumper cars. Come on, baby, kiss me on the Texas Star. All right, we're gonna walk down.
Okay.
It's 20 stories up in the air. We just go back and forth. Built for the sesquicentennial thing. Did y'all know that's 150 years? By Buster Brown, a concessionaire. With 15,000 lights, it's brilliant up there. Hey, you know what? You're a flute star. Oh, nice. Take another one. That was awesome. Woo! That's awesome.
Keep going, Annie.
So ride with me on that crazy Ferris wheel, high above the world in a gondola made of steel. And when my feet leave the ground, I surrender to my heart. Oh, baby, won't you kiss me on the Texas Star? Oh, baby, kiss me. Pucker up and kiss me on the Texas Star.
Hey.
Doo-doo, 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 doo-doo.
Hey.
That was awesome. Oh my gosh, you're hired. We'll have to like have dueling Texas Star flutes. Like instead of dueling guitars, we'll have dueling flutes.
I'm envisioning us doing this in Dallas. I actually I for a time in my life I worked at the state fair, but not at the state fair, at the children's aquarium at the state fair.
Oh, the children's aquarium there is like one of my favorite places in the whole wide world. Oh my gosh, I have so many happy memories there.
Yeah.
Wow. When did you work there?
It was probably like 2010 or 2011, 2012, something
well,
like
I
that.
probably saw you there because I probably brought my nieces there.
My first job out of music college actually was I was a monorail safari tour guide at the Dallas Zoo,
Wow.
which was fun. It helped me develop my stage presence and ability to speak on a microphone. But during the time that I worked at the Dallas Zoo, they reopened the children's aquarium at Fair Park, and it happened to be during the Texas State Fair.
Oh my gosh.
So actually, I
Crazy.
remember going out of walking out of the work where I'm like helping people pet like stingrays and stuff, and trying deep fried cheesecake, which y'all I would not eat anymore because I don't eat animals. I don't eat dairy. But
was it
gosh,
on a stick though? But was it on a stick?
it was not on a stick, but across from us there was corn dogs and corn
Funnel
on a
cakes
stick too. Yeah, all that stuff, all that fried stuff. It's a very particular odor, like the smell of the state fair.
Oh yeah, you can't.
So,
The cotton candy, yeah. Because when I was writing that song, I was trying to think of details, like when you're up there. What is it that you think about when you're on the Texas Star, when you're on the Ferris wheel looking out, and you smell all that grease? And I was thinking, well, I'll just say cotton candy. That's enough. That sugary, sticky smell, yeah. But it is a very unique thing.
yeah.
That's awesome. Oh my gosh,
That's
yeah.
fun. Well, I forgot before we started this call that you grew up in Dallas, so we have, we've walked some of the same Texas turf.
We have, definitely. And now you're in Austin, and I recorded my last record down there, so yeah, it's awesome.
Well, there's
Very
plenty of us
fortunate.
musicians here to collaborate with.
Yeah, and Texas has got some amazing music schools and just amazing music programs. So I just feel really blessed that I came up out in with that access. And that I learned how to play properly, because because even, I mean, like, it's so strange, like, even I played soccer for years and years and years, and I tore my meniscus, and when I did, I went to go get my surgery, and then I went to go do my PT, and my PT was like, your posture is amazing. Like, what? He's like, I work with athletes all the time, and their posture is not like yours. Why is your posture so good? And I said, let me tell you about my posture. I play the flute, and my flute teachers just worked on it and worked on it and worked on it and worked on it. He said, yeah, your posture's amazing. And just little things that happened from having good educators and having access to good private lesson teachers who worked with me one-on-one, holding my body properly. I mean, singing just came naturally because I already knew what to do with my body instinctively, because I was already doing it playing flute. And years later, I talked to a cousin of mine. She's an opera singer. And she studied, and she got her master's in opera, and she sang out in LA, and she said that what she tells her young students is to pick up a woodwind.
To pick up a woodwind?
You have to hold your body properly. Because your voice changes so many times from the time you're 12, to 30 or whatever. And then if you have children, your voice changes, especially if you have a female and you have male children. You get all that testosterone in your body. So our voices change so much. And she said, but if you're a young student, like her young students that she's teaching voice to, she'll say, go pick up a woodwind. So she said, you did it right without even knowing that you did it right. I'm like, I had good teachers.
I have some other Flutarians lives scheduled here in the near future with some vocalists, so we'll be talking a little bit about the crossovers between flute and voice. So
awesome, very good.
Thank you so much for playing some music with me tonight, Annie. This has been the highlight of my day. When you're ready to record some dueling flutes for the Texas Star, we can make it happen.
Yeah, let's totally do it. Definitely, and maybe we can write some flute duets.
Sure.
And leave huge gaps in the middle for improvisation.
I like how you're thinking. Well, anything else you want to share with the Flutarians group before we move on?
I just want to say that you are a treasure and you are a gem, and I just really appreciate what you're doing, and how you're introducing a lot of people to a lot of different ways of playing. And I just think it's really important, and I really appreciate it. And thank you for including me, because I really have had such a different trajectory than so many people who play. And, I think there's... The thing about playing the flute is that it's like I said earlier, I think it's the coolest instrument ever, because the flute and the cello, are like the closest to the human voice. And even the way you hold your body when you play the flute is very, very similar to the way you sing. And I think that discussing improv is really important because this is an instrument that's so versatile and it can do so many things. And improv allows us to have the opportunity to do that. So thank you for what you're doing. And thanks for inviting me. This has been the highlight of my day too. And thank you for playing with me because I just think it's the greatest when you write a song and someone else adds to it. So thank you.
Aw. Well,
Hey,
goodbye to the Flutarians and have a great evening.
thank you. Bye.